Today's lesson is on food chains. We're going to run through some vocab and talk about some characteristics of food chains. The first vocab word that you need to know is autotroph. An autotroph is an organism that can produce their own food source through photosynthesis. They are also called producers. Auto means self, to be able to do something yourself, and troph means feeding. So these are self-feeding organisms, like plants. A heterotroph is an organism that receives energy by consuming another organism. These are considered consumers. There's different types of heterotrophs that we're going to talk about here, right? There's a pretty significant difference between what this panda bear eats and what this grizzly bear would eat. So the first type of heterotroph is an herbivore. An herbivore is something that consumes only autotrophs for energy, so they eat plants. So you have things like deer, gorillas, caterpillars, rabbits, elephants. Those would all be considered herbivores because they only eat plants for their energy. Another type of heterotroph is a carnivore. Carnivores consume other heterotrophs, so they eat other animals. So you have wolves, tigers, cheetahs, alligators, sharks. They are all considered to be carnivores, the type of heterotroph, because they consume other animals. Third type of heterotroph is an omnivore, and that's what we are. We consume both autotrophs and heterotrophs. So this is something that would consume both plant and animal material. So bears actually eat a lot of plant material in addition to fish and other animals. Chickens are omnivores. They eat both plant material and animals. They eat bugs along with plants. And then pigs are another example of an omnivore. And like I said before, we are also omnivores because we eat both plant and animal material. The fourth type is a decomposer. Decomposers consume dead organisms and the waste products of other organisms. They are really important, as we saw in that carbon cycle adventure activity, to bring the carbon that was stored in these plants and animals that have died and to help it cycle it back into the atmosphere so that it can be used again. Remember, matter is not created or destroyed. It is recycled somehow. So examples of decomposers are different types of fungi like mushrooms, worms, snails, slugs, things like that. Those are all considered to be decomposers. The next thing that we need to talk about are trophic levels. Trophic, again, means feeding, right? Troph means feeding. And then the trophic levels are the different levels in a food chain. When you did the Meadow Lab simulation, where we talk about food chains, there's something really important, and it's called the 10% rule. And what that means is that only 10% of the available energy in one trophic level is available for the next level. The other 90% of the energy is used for the organism itself, for growth, moving, hunting, making new cells and tissues, cellular needs, whatever that organism needs. So if a producer, for an example, makes 100 grams of energy, let's just say, the next level only gets 10% of that. So 10% of 100 would be 10. So only 10 grams would be available for that level. And then only 10% of that would go up. So now we're looking at 1% of energy. And then when we get to the very top level, again, it's only 10% of that. So we have 0.1% available. So the higher up we get on food chains, the less energy those animals get out of what they're consuming. Okay, there's not as much available to them anymore in this. If you think of this as carbon, how much carbon is able to pass, and we look at carbon as a measure of how much glucose, which is a measure of how much energy is available. Okay, so those plants make 100% of their energy, but only 10% of that is available to the rabbits and the deer, for example, that eat those plants. And then when a carnivore eats that herbivore, it's only getting 10% of that energy. So it gets smaller and smaller as we go. So here's another picture of that. Here's the different food chain. So we have the grass, that's our producer, makes 100% of the energy, but the plant keeps 90% of that for itself. And when this prairie dog eats the grass, it only gets 10% of that energy from the grass. And then when the coyote eats the prairie dog, he only gets 10% of the 10% that the prairie dog got. And then the vulture, which is our top level here, only gets 10% of what the coyote got. So it's a really, really small number. So this should coincide with some of the information that you gathered from the meadow simulation activity and make a little bit more sense of why you kept getting those same numbers when you did the meadow simulation.